the spooky South Coast and around the world on Midnight.fm. This is Midnight Society. I am your host, Tim Weisburg. Whether it is the brightest of day or the darkest of night, wherever you may be, it's time to hunker down for the next 3 hours as we enter into a world of wonder and weird that you won't hear anywhere else. And tonight, we're going to learn all about adventures beyond the body. Our guest tonight, Marilyn Hughes, is going to join us to talk about how you can have your own out-of-body experience, and she's also going to share with us some of the research she has done into the topic, and we will find out exactly what she's learned, what she's done, what she's achieved, and how you can do it too. We'll also take your calls throughout the course of the discussion as well. Maybe you've had an out-of-body experience, maybe you can do it frequently, maybe you've tried it and failed, or you just can't get over the hump. She can help us figure out exactly what's going on. So it should be an enlightening discussion tonight with Marilyn, and the phone lines will be open, 508-322-1985. That's 508-322-1985. You can also email me during the program, tim@midnight.fm, and you can join the Midnight Society Facebook group, where Tracy does a great job of starting the show thread each and every day, hours before the show comes online, so that you can start talking about that night's topic and getting the conversation rolling. And that's always pinned right to the top of the Midnight Society with Tim Weisburg Facebook group. So feel free to jump in there. If you're not on Facebook, you can always get involved with the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag MidnightFM. And if you're a member at Midnight.fm, at the elite or insider levels, you have access to our Discord server. And in the Discord server, there's always some fun conversation going on as well. So we like to kind of spread it all out. I know that that's kind of counterintuitive when you say, oh, we're all going to come together and talk about some weird topics. But we like to have a variety of different methods so that people can feel like they're part of the Midnight Society, no matter where they are or how they connect. So all those different ways are available to you. Earlier today in the Midnight Society Facebook group, I posted the upcoming schedule for all the programming that's coming to the network, at least what's been solidified so far. And I also wrote about it in my weekly column for the Telepath newsletter from the Paranormal Radio app. So if you have the Paranormal Radio app and you subscribe to the Telepath, you can read all about some of the decisions and some of the ideas behind the programs that are coming up. I can tell you that not only are we, very excited for everything that's to come, but we're very excited that it's actually going to kick off tonight. Following this program, you will hear Fright Day for the first time here on Midnight.fm. It is a great, great show, and it discusses a lot of the things that are going on in the world of horror, but also they talk about some other cool topics as well, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. It's a fun listen, and that's the thing that we're looking for here. We're trying to inform you and entertain you with all the different programming that is coming to Midnight.fm. So Fright Day is launching tonight. You will be able to hear that immediately following this program. And then, of course, the next new show coming your way this week is on Thursday, prior to Midnight Society at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. You can do the math around that. So, all right, I'll help you. 9 p.m. Eastern Time would be 8 p.m. Central and would be 6 p.m. Pacific Time. The Haunted Librarian with Lisa Schnurr will be hitting the Midnight.fm airwaves. So you'll be able to listen to that before Midnight Society on Thursday. And then, of course, on Friday, we'll have the Midnight Drive after show immediately following Midnight Society. And then in the coming weeks, it'll actually be the beginning of September, we'll debut the After Midnight with Amy Martin show after Midnight Drive. So there's going to be so much coming your way. It's all laid out for you in the Telepath newsletter and in the Midnight Society with Tim Weisburg Facebook group. I also have the opportunity to preview the Spook Eats Haunted Happy Hour program, and I think you guys are really going to like that as well. Amanda has a really cool vibe to that show, and of course she's going to be talking about things that we all love: ghosts and food and drinks. What else can you ask for? So I think you'll be excited when that comes in the next few weeks. As I said, she decided that having a baby is more important than starting a show. I guess I can understand that. Even though, it's the show is far less demanding on your time. You know, you just have to give us an hour or so of your week. You don't have to wake up at 3 a.m. and feed it. So, but, you know, I don't know. I guess babies have their value too. Especially if you need a co-host, going forward. So that'll be coming in the next few weeks. But everything is all laid out for you right there. And I think you'll be excited about, what is coming your way, because it's, again, the idea is to be entertaining, fun, informative, and to have something cool and different playing on the network at all different times of the day, so that no matter where you're listening or when you're listening, midnight.fm is the place where you're going to go. All right, let's get right into tonight's show with our guest tonight. Marilyn Hughes founded the Out of Body Travel Foundation in 2003 with its mission to reduce spiritual and physical hunger worldwide. Marilyn has written 102 books, and I had to read that multiple times to make sure I had it right. 102 books, including the first and only English language encyclopedia of ancient sacred texts, 40 magazines, and 18 CDs on out-of-body travel and comparative religious mysticism. Marilyn has experienced, researched, written, and taught about out-of-body travel and mysticism since 1987 and has appeared on innumerable radio and television programs to discuss her thousands of out-of-body experiences, and she's going to share it all with us tonight. Good evening, Marilyn. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Tim?
I'm doing very well. My first question is, are you writing a book right now during this program as we speak?
Not during the program.
Because I can't figure out how else you crank out 102 books. Wow.
Yeah, I've been definitely cranking it out, that's for sure.
Now, I mean, in terms of, you know, having the material to be able to write 102 books, it seems like out-of-body experiences are a very frequent occurrence for you.
Yes, they are, definitely. I started having them regularly at the age of 22, which is about 33 years ago for me. And I had some when I was a child as well, which kind of opened the way for the experiences in my adulthood. So, once it began, it was not quite so frequent. But then as you progress and make strides in the direction towards more and more awareness of what's happening, you are able to make the experiences, they just come more frequently.
I mean, do you spend more time out of your body inside of your body than inside your body sometimes?
I don't know. I mean, there have been times like that, definitely, but not all the time. But there are times when I'm being called into very intensive periods of mystical work or things like that, where definitely that does seem to happen. And then, but you know, there's an ebb and flow when you're talking about anything spiritual, where you're going to pull in, pull back, move forward, stop. Move forward, stop, because it's the balance of surrender and release. So there are times when it's very heavy duty. There are times when you stop, and then there are periods of time where it becomes very dry. And these are all normal parts of the process.
So let's kind of get into the idea of exactly why it is that people are able to travel out of their own bodies, because it seems like on the surface that it would be something that would be impossible to do. Okay,
well, ironically, for me, it wouldn't seem impossible. Yes. But,
well, I mean, just looking at it from the perspective of somebody who's skeptical, they say, well, the mind is something that's located within the body, and what else can you do besides that? I mean, you're given a body and that's it. But it seems like that's just the very beginning.
That's kind of the tip of the iceberg, and I think that's what is often forgotten or missed by those who look at it in such a simplistic way, because they're not realizing that, existence is multi-layered, dimensional existence is multi-dimensional. Our viewpoints, our scientific discoveries are all third-dimensional. The spiritual and out-of-body travel experiences, those are coming from a multi-dimensional reality. So from that understanding, it's not at all it's not at all bizarre or out of the ordinary at all. And in reality, everyone does do this every night. It's part of the natural process where the physical soul, the physical person, is actually nourished and received from the world of the spirit through subconscious, meaning experiences that people may not be aware of or remember that they're having. These things happen every night to everyone. Part of learning how to have out-of-body experiences involves becoming more and more conscious of what is naturally already happening to you.
I mean, I think that, you know, when I'm asleep, you know, I'd like to think that I am safe. Is it safe to be traveling outside of your body if you're not aware of it?
Well, if you understand how this works, this is actually one of the physiological processes of our existence. So, of course it's safe. It's exactly how we were designed to operate. It's the mechanism by which we were created. We don't actually operate very well if we don't receive influx from the spiritual side of our existence. You'll see that when people get really cut off from that, it makes it much harder for us to function in a real well-rounded way. I mean, that's a simplistic statement, but you know, you get the idea of what I'm going for. It could be explained more deeply. However, you have to understand that one of the ways that we observe things that are is we're learning about ourselves and how we were created just by the way that they are. And the way that this mechanism operates tells us that this is something necessary for us. In my own out-of-body travel experiences, I have been shown how the spectrum of existence is like a circle, and our physical existence is one half of that circle, the lower half. The spiritual existence is the upper half of that circle. And so when we don't have the conscious mind is not aware of the whole picture, there is always something missing then. So we're not going to be nearly as dynamic in our purpose or moving forward towards the actual impetus which caused our incarnation here in this realm. So it's actually a very natural process.
And is it something that people have been doing for a long time overall? I mean, is it something that humanity's been capable of and aware of for a long time?
I would guess that that's probably the way that it's been done since the beginning. It's kind of a part of our construct, the way that we've been constructed, the way we've been created. We are spiritual beings. Now, you know, some people might have a different view about that, and that's fine. But I'm just speaking from my own experience of this, that as spiritual beings, this spiritual influx is necessary for us to fuel and feed the physical aspect of our waking existence.
So let's kind of get into how it was that you started being able to do this. When you first discovered it, how did you come to it? Is it by accident or was it through study?
It was actually by accident. The very first experience of it was when I was about 9 years old, and I had a very beautiful vision while lying in bed where the clouds opened up. There was a beautiful marble staircase from where I was lying in bed to the heavens, and there were angels aligned on each side. And I was walking up the steps towards these two beings who I perceived to be God and the Sun. And then I was given a lot of information about my future in this life and told that I had a purpose and that it would be brought back to me later in my life. I was shown I would have difficulties and sufferings, but that in the end, it would all be for a greater purpose. And so then when I was around 22 years old, I had my first spontaneous, unintended, out-of-body experience since then. And then it kind of went from there. It's been going on ever since, and then of course, in the experiences that I began to have, I was very directly led as to things I should study. And so I began to study quite a bit, in fact, which led to this fascination that a lot of my readers are aware of with the ancient sacred texts.
Well, I think for me, when we're talking about this, I do consider the fact that there are a lot of things about the mind and about our consciousness that I don't fully understand. Do you feel like this is something that everybody is capable of doing and that they just haven't had the experience of doing so yet? Or are there some people that just might not be at that level?
I think that it's a capability that lies latent within every human being, because as I said, every human being does experience this on some level. It may, however, not actually be productive or conducive to the spiritual growth of every single person to try to practice this. There are certain cases where practicing or trying to achieve out-of-body travel becomes more of a risk or a problem. But for instance, people who may have undergone serious spiritual warfare issues in the past, like if you have been possessed in the past, if you have had situations where you had a lot of spiritual persecution from ghosts or dark or evil entities of any kind, there can be particular situations where it does become a better decision for someone to close the door for that in order to protect them from any type of contamination. For the most part, if you follow this and you undergo the mystical training that will come to you from the spiritual realm as you are following this, and then you follow the instructions that are given you as well in regards to studying the things you need to study about discernment, and about spiritual warfare and about good and evil and all these things that we will then be introduced to, energetic truth, then you're going to be given a certain level of protection and be shown also how to protect yourself along the way. But it isn't necessarily the best road for every single living soul. It is a great road for many, many people. But, as with everything, it's not absolute. Some people should stay away from it, and some people, it may not be their desired spiritual path, because there are many that people can take, and the goal really comes back to what we talk about at the Out-of-Body Travel Foundation, which is the grand phases of the soul, which is the purification of the soul. And if you're seeking that, whether it's through out-of-body travel or another means, then you are seeking well.
I wouldn't have thought that there was so much responsibility involved with it, both, personally, of a personal nature and at kind of the universal level as well.
Oh, there's a great deal of responsibility. And in fact, I wrote a lot about this in several of my books. But, speaking particularly like of the Mysteries of the Redemption, a treatise on out-of-body travel and mysticism, we talked a lot about different instances where I had to learn about certain eternal laws that as an out-of-body traveler, you cannot cross. And if you do, there are serious, penalties for it. There are energetic laws and energetic truths that determine the validity of every interaction on the ground or otherwise. And these are the things that we learn to abide by. And we also learn the consequences of not doing so and why it is harmful, why it is so necessary, because when we do not understand, when we don't understand the possible consequences of anything that we might introduce to another soul, to that soul, then we're walking on holy ground, so to speak, because we are walking on the individual evolution of another soul. And so there is a great deal of responsibility placed upon us ourselves, but also upon us as we enter into the path of service, where we are serving other souls in the capacity of the out-of-body travel state. But also it's so important to know this when dealing with whether or not you want to introduce this to somebody, just because you want to understand whether or not it is something that could be a positive for them or whether it could be a destructive thing, depending on their own particular past. People who may have had unusual experiences, earlier in life, if they had dealt with, it doesn't even have to be the possession, it could be the severe hauntings, if they lived in a home and they've gone through this sort of type of demonic persecution before. These are people where you might want to shut that door for their own protection. So yes, there's a lot of responsibility. And these are the things that we talk about when we're talking about the alteration pathway, which relates to energetic truth, learning that what is true to God, regardless of what things appear to be from the many ways that we might look at something down here below.
Okay, well, and I think as we go along, we can get into kind of some of the different reasons and rationales behind this for different people. But it seems like no matter what it is, you have to be coming from a place that's pure. It can't be something that you're doing, like just for example, to leave your own body to go spy on somebody else necessarily.
Right, and that is a very good point, because it's not only just, it's like playing around with it versus using it for its true purpose, which is pure gold. So playing around with it, you can do that, but it's not going to provide you with anything meaningful. Whereas when you understand the pure gold that you can retain from the experience, then you understand that you are really dealing with something that offers you so many tools for self-transformation and for actually achieving the purpose of your incarnation here. The reason why you came here, because it literally accelerates your path by bringing forward to your vision the things that you need to see, address, and alter in this lifetime in order to complete the tasks that were set before you before your birth.
Oh, so we do have a checklist of responsibilities that we're supposed to be achieving.
Well, we have, I don't know if you call it a checklist, but there are things that we do set out to achieve. And, some of these things can be energetic alterations. These can be things that we don't fully understand about eternal love, or they can be things that are karmic misunderstandings that we have, or oftentimes, in the mortal realms, which is where we reside, dimensions 3 and 4, we are often here because of, karma. And these often involve other souls and sometimes configurations with other people. And so it can be that you have to work through some types of issues regarding interpersonal relationships, misunderstandings that we have about how those are to play out in a way that serves the entire universal being, rather than in ways that kind of hold us to the ground and keep us tethered to the earth, rather than setting us free and showing us how we can become more expansive as a spirit, and also how we do the same for others in our lives. So yes, there's so much there, yes.
All right, well, we are going to take our first break of the night. When we come back, we will continue on with our discussion tonight, as we'll be talking about all things adventures beyond the body with our guest, Marilyn Hughes. If you want to find out more about her during the break, or if you want to pick up some of her 102 books, just go to midnight.fm. We'll be back with more Midnight Society in just a few moments right here on midnight.fm. Welcome back into Midnight Society here on Midnight.fm. And tonight we are talking with Marilyn Hughes about traveling outside of your body, and we're learning all about how it works and how it can work for you. And of course, a little bit later on, we will also open up the phone lines, but we do have some questions that are rolling into the Midnight Society Facebook group, and I will do my best to try and incorporate those into the discussion as we go along. But as we're discussing this and we're talking about the ability to leave our own bodies, Marilyn, the question becomes, what is it? What's the mechanism that allows this to happen?
Well, it's really a lot more simple than I think we can make it, which is that we have a physical body and we have a spiritual body, and the spiritual body is our soul. And so we're able to leave our physical body through the spirit, the soul. And so that's how it happens. It's that simple.
Well, I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. So when we do travel outside of our body, then where can we go? Where do we have the ability to go? Is it moving within our own physical reality? Is it moving into other dimensions or places or other times?
It's all those things and so much more. When you begin, you're going to start learning about basic things, like you'll see physical realm things, like a lot of people report seeing their body below and floating around the room, maybe flying through windows or doors or things like this, and that they'll see the basics of the astral plane. But as you progress on this journey, you're going to be introduced into things like corridors, tunnels, and these things will take you into multidimensional realities. And when you are going to these places, literally, this is where you're just hitting the realm of what St. Paul said was, eye has not seen nor ear heard what God has prepared for those who love him. It is so infinite, what you can see. You're going to be able to travel through, infinite numbers of heavens, hells, and purgatories. You're going to be able to travel through infinite numbers of realms of infinite being, which are really beautiful places. There's the pure lands of the Buddhas. There's so many places you can travel through the galactic heavens. You can learn about other alien life, extraterrestrial life, other types of forms that live in different spheres of knowledge, interdimensional beings. You travel forward and backwards in time to literally revisit your own past or future lifetimes. You can be taken into these beautiful realms where you're taught about your purpose in this life, your creative gifts or your scientific gifts or whatever your particular mode of operation is. You are given acceleration and extra help on those areas, and literally you're energized in those areas. Then we're taken through this grand purification, which is where we learn all about good and evil within ourselves and within all that lies around us, and then all that exists within the universal sphere. And this is where we become able to then rise into realms where such dualities don't necessarily even exist anymore. But here in mortal worlds they do. In such in the higher spheres, these dualities tend to fade away. So there's so much. I mean, we're talking about temples in the sky. We're talking about, seeing, going through the initiations into the mysteries and the rites of passage, which is one of my favorite periods of, the out-of-body travel development, because you're literally being taken through all of these, rites and rituals and initiations into the knowledge of ancient wisdom that goes and moves through all of the different religious systems, tribal systems, cultural systems, different spiritual systems that have, been left as remnants through great people all over the world in our planet. And even as you continue doing that, you're going to actually start doing things with even higher levels of wisdom that goes beyond this world. There's the Palace of Ancient Knowledge, which is the library that holds all the ancient texts, all the great sacred books that were ever written on Earth. And some of those books that are there are not from Earth, they're from other worlds. So it's a beautiful library, 6 floors, all in white, golden gilded staircases, and the scrolls are there, and these huge ancient books that contain the wisdom of the ages. You've been there? Yes.
Sounds like quite the place. Is that the same as what we hear referred to as the Akashic Records?
No, they're different.
Really?
The Akashic Records actually looks quite different. It's, you'll find the Akashic Records in more of a cloudiest zone, and you'll be flying into a cloudiest zone, and it's almost like a filing cabinet in the sky that kind of goes on for, a long, long time, really high up filing cabinet. And if you have to go look at something, you're going to be interiorly directed exactly to the one that you're going to open up that tells you what you need to know. It's possible as well that, one of the things to keep in mind is these things manifest differently to different people, and that's normal for that to happen, because God allows for us to see things in ways that work for us at the time. So this could be altered, in different people's experiences. But with the experiences that I'd had with the Akashic Records, it was up in the skies, and it was like a floating library, but it was a different kind of library. It was, like filing cabinets.
Is there still a 2-week limit on being able to check out a book from that library?
I think so.
And do they fine you if you return it late? That's the important question.
Probably. I don't know.
But I mean, that sounds incredible to be able to have all of that information right there for you, and to have it be a place that you can just travel to when you need. I mean, we look at, having the internet as being a great tool for us to be able to find pretty much anything we're ever looking for, but this is like the internet on steroids.
Well, yes, and what's amazing about it is that what people don't often realize about the out-of-body experience and what makes it so profoundly powerful for us individually is that we are given the opportunity here to literally pinpoint what it is we need to know, because what we think we need to know is usually different from what we really need to know. So like if you're taken, like for instance, when I'm taken to the Akashic Records, it's not something that happens a lot, because it's kind of something that it's a special event when you're taken there, but when I'm taken there, I'm allowed to see a certain portion that is related to what I need to know for that particular visit. And so what it does is, so I'm getting pinpointed right in on what I need to know. For instance, one time I was taken to the Akashic Records because I had started learning how to help lost souls to cross over. And I didn't like the job because it was kind of scary at the beginning. It was, this was like 30-some years ago. I wasn't comfortable with the whole thing because it was very new to me. So I was asking in prayer not to have to do that anymore. And my task was I was taken to the Akashic Records, and I was shown that I had actually signed up to do that in this lifetime, that it was something I'd agreed to do, and that immediately made me realize, oh, well, I guess I'm going to keep doing this. So it pinpointed me right into what I needed to know, which was basically stop complaining and get to work. You know what I mean? And so, but this, one of the things about out-of-body experiences is it does this in every aspect. So whether it's your karma, whether you're looking at your past lifetimes, where as you travel through these lifetimes, you're being taken into lifetimes that are going to have something that is of importance to you right now. And then you're going to start seeing patterns that are going to direct you to start recognizing it looks like this might be, this particular group of souls, this particular relationship conflict, this might be the karmic configuration I need to take a look at. So you start seeing all these things very clearly. Also, as you're going through the training that you have, the mystical training in the out-of-body travel state, you're literally being taught mystically about energetic truth, about what is good, what is evil, why is it this way, and it's taught to you energetically, because it's all about what is life-giving, meaning what propels you forward, and what is life-taking, with that which propels you backwards. And so you start understanding these things from the standpoint of how do I assist my own soul and the souls of others in propelling forward. And it becomes a very you take away the ideas of personal shame and feeling guilty about things, and focusing primarily on, is this a hindrance for me? Is this keeping me from moving forward in my spiritual development? And if so, then I'm going to also now learn how to remove that as an attachment or a fetter or a craving. I'm going to start working on that because it's keeping me from moving forward in the spirit. It's pulling me back. And so we become much more focused on that which actually assists our soul in evolution and forward movement, rather than kind of getting stuck, standing in place, doing a lot of the same things over and over again, which is what a lot of us do. It's pretty typical of us as humans. We do that. And so it helps us a lot. We learn we go right to the heart and the core of what it is that we need to understand. We're literally taken to that core in the out-of-body experiences. We're shown, and we not only, it's just like when you hear about a near-death experiencer who goes through a life review. You're going to experience the things that you are doing in your life, and the way that it makes other people feel, and the reasons why it is not serving your path forward. And you're going to see it in this way so that it actually changes you on a molecular level and gives you the option to alter that so that you can move forward rather than stand still or go backwards.
Well, I'm going to just take a step back here for a second to when we were talking about the difference between this library and the Akashic Records. Tracy asks in the Midnight Society what the difference is in the material and the information that's provided in each place, and also if either of these places could be accessed by any entities or people with negative or nefarious intentions.
That's a very good question. Excuse me. Really good question. The Palace of Ancient Knowledge is like the receptacle of all the ancient writings written by the prophets, saints, mystics, sages, and ascetics from throughout the world, throughout time, throughout history, and holy people. This includes shamans, tribal tribal, spiritual people, different types of things like this. The Akashic Records is primarily the records of things that we have done in the past and the things we have chosen and agreed to do in the present. And so it's almost like, it's a record of our lifetime here, but also of our many lifetimes, whereas the Palace of Ancient Knowledge is a record of all knowledge. So they're different in that way. And yes, there is a great deal of protection given to these places to keep those with nefarious intent from accessing them.
I mean, that's a good thing to have. And because I would think that if they got access to it, that would only kind of, not only would it make it so that they had that information, but it would also keep others who need to access that information from being able to do so.
Well, yeah, and one of the things that often happens with that is just utilizing it for the wrong purpose. The biggest concern with anything like with the Palace of Ancient Knowledge is utilizing the information incorrectly. Because any type of spiritual instruction can be misinterpreted if a soul is coming in there without the proper foundational knowledge that's required for them to understand the next level of thinking. And so, we can all take something and completely misunderstand it. And so that can definitely happen. With the Akashic Records, it's a good question because I'm not exactly sure why it is so carefully, but it is very carefully protected. And so I'm sure there's good reasons for it. But it would be also, you would just have to guess on these points on the Akashic Record, is that they would want to be protecting, they would want to protect from the nefarious intention to interfere with destiny or to interfere with the self-declared intentions of a soul as they move forward to, achieve certain things in various lifetimes or various existences in different realms. They want to protect that knowledge for the safety of each individual person and soul as they move forward. And I think that that's part of the reason. I know that there was, in the Palace of Ancient Knowledge, I remember there was a soldier angel was actually stationed there. It was very similar to a Saint Michael type of energy, but it was not Saint Michael. But it was kind of like an archangelish kind of being, and he did guard that entrance to the Palace of Ancient Knowledge. With the Akashic Record, I was not given to remember how we got through, and so there probably is, but I was not allowed to remember the way in or the way out. And that's part of the interesting thing about the Akasha, is that was how well guarded that was, is that they took the memory of getting in and getting out away from me. So that lets us know that that's very carefully guarded.
Well, I just want to let everybody know that's listening, if there's any problems with the broadcast, with the internet, it's because right now Tropical Storm Isaias is passing through where I live, so that might cause us some issues here and there. But so far the storm has been far less than predicted. In fact, it was supposed to be nonstop rain, and I think it rained for about 20 minutes a few hours ago, and now it's just been a lot of wind. But that wind is what could cause us some problems as we go along. So just keep that in mind. If things start to drop a little bit, we'll do our best to kind of fight our way through it. Marilyn, a question that I would have is, I don't want to throw around terms that are not similar. Is there a difference between out-of-body travel and astral travel?
Yeah, the difference between out-of-body travel and astral travel is this. Astral refers to the overlapping fourth dimensional realm, which basically overlaps like the third dimensional realm that we reside in, the Earth. And that is a very limited sphere of travel. So that's one realm. Out-of-body travel refers to anything including that, but also beyond that. So that would include all multidimensional travel. So any travel in any of the infinite realms, the multidimensional realms, past life travel, future life travel, initiations into the mysteries travel, interior travel, which occurs too. So it's, that's one thing that I think sometimes people do not understand. It's not a real important distinction, because what people generally mean is the same thing, but astral is speaking of that overlapping fourth realm, and that's one place in particular, and it's very close to the earth, whereas out-of-body travel is referring to a much wider range of travel.
Okay. And so that kind of clears that up a little bit for me. Now, one of the questions that came up in the Midnight Society Facebook group, and hold on, let me get to that, is the idea that we've heard this term thrown around a lot when people talk about these experiences of the silver cord, that there's some sort of connection that tethers us back to our physical bodies. Is that something that you found in your experiences?
I personally have never seen a silver cord, but I have spoken to many people, some of whom have not seen it and some of whom have. So I think that is just dependent on the person and their own experience. There is definitely, without question, there is something that tethers us to the body in which we are, living and inhabiting at this time. And so, it may just be something that some of us are able to see and some of us don't see for whatever reason. So I've never personally seen it, but I've heard equal accounts on both sides.
How do we protect ourselves if we're leaving our physical body? Is there a way that we can protect our bodies that we leave behind to keep anything else from jumping into our physical shells?
Well, that's a good question too. I do a lot of things involving, prayer, incense, having a crucifix around the bed, the place that you're doing this from, having a certain sacramentals, a rosary, doing things like that are really going to make the difference. What you do find in the out-of-body travel experience is that Christ is a very important spiritual warfare person, as well as Saint Michael. These are the people you call for help when you do run into trouble. And so having a crucifix, a holy rosary in your hand when you're traveling, holy water, holy salt, holy oil. You can get those at any Catholic church. Priests will bless that, and they're usually available at any Catholic church. Those are all really good things for that. And it's keeping a general ambiance around, where you keep an area that is free of clutter. You keep an area that you create kind of as your own sanctified ground for your practice. And, so whatever your particular leanings towards your own particular faith, or whatever culture, or whatever, if it's Native American, that you have the things around you that are sacred and are meant for the purification. Now, most people are not going to have problems with this, but there are situations where that can happen. So it's something that everyone should be aware of. Even if it's a rare situation that occurs in unusual cases where you want to be careful of things that involve like any type of dark activity, like dark magic, Ouija boards, things where you're playing around with spirituality, because then you're bringing in spirits or energies or forces that may want to play around with you a little bit too, and you don't want to do that. So there's a lot of guidance about these things also in my books that goes into a lot of detail on how do we protect ourselves.
Excellent. We might jump into some of that a little bit too as we continue on with our discussion, but it's time for us to take our next break. We will be back in a few moments to continue on with our discussion. And again, don't forget that immediately following this program is our new Tuesday night into Wednesday morning program, Fright Day, which you can catch each week right here on Midnight.fm. It is a very cool show where they cover all kinds of topics to do with the world of horror, and they talk about some other strange things and unusual things. So you can join Sam, Byron, and Captain Kelly tonight on Fright Day, immediately following Midnight Society, right here on Midnight.fm. And of course, if you are chatting about it in the Midnight Society Facebook group, if you are discussing it on Twitter with the hashtag MidnightFM, if you're talking about it in the Discord server, hang out in all those places because the conversation will keep going as Fright Day premieres a little bit later on. We'll take a quick break and then more Midnight Society right here on Midnight.fm.
Call into the show. Dial 508-322-1985. That's 508-322-1985. Or Skype midnight.fm.
Back in with more Midnight Society here on Midnight.fm. And tonight we are talking with Marilyn Hughes as we are discussing adventures beyond the body. We're talking about out-of-body experiences and how you can have your own out-of-body experiences, and that it's something that you can achieve and something that you can not only be able to have happen to yourself, but also how to best utilize it in a way that makes it so that you can learn from this experience. So it goes beyond just having an out-of-body experience and having a cool thing happen, but figuring out how to utilize that to better yourself and to better others as a result of it. So a question comes in, Marilyn, from Suadon in the Midnight Society Facebook group. Have you ever taken an out-of-body tour of the solar system and beyond and ever run into anything unusual out there?
Yeah. Not necessarily all at the same time, but I've taken many tours to different planets in the system and also to beyond our system. You know, one of the things that people don't know is when you go through a black hole, you're entering into another dimensional awareness, which is what I call the Galactic Heavens, and that's where a lot of the actual heavenly realms are. And so in those realms, you will be experiencing some of the heavenly places, and the neat thing about that is so are extraterrestrials from other worlds, but it's so common there that you don't even realize that's going on until you come back into your physical form and you're like, wait a minute, there were extraterrestrials in heaven, because it's natural there, so that when you see them, you're not like surprised or anything. It's just natural. But yes, you do see things out there. In terms of if you're wondering if I've seen anything in regards to the some of the extraterrestrial mysteries, I've seen a lot of things in relation to the Pleiadians, to the Venusians. Some of these societies I'm talking about now are interdimensional beings. So these are not necessarily beings you're going to see in a physical sphere. They're like fifth dimensional and up. And then there are also these other two societies that I communicate with that I don't have names for. One of them I call the Tibetans, just because they told me that they worked the most with the Tibetan people because they were the easiest for them to work with unconsciously, because they were more open to their assistance from above. And then the other group is just this beautiful culture. They exist very, very, very far away from here. Very far away, very far away. I don't even know how to quantify it in terms of like light years. It would be like hundreds of thousands, of light years. But they live in this planet that is so far beyond what we can comprehend in terms of living in love and light, but like to the power of 15 billion, it's like, and it's such a beautiful existence. And I was allowed on one occasion to morph into one of these beings, and just by doing so, experience what it was like on their world for a period of time. And then I had to return, and I can say I was really not wanting to come back. I wanted to stay there. It was so beautiful, so filled with light. And these beings are so far beyond us. And the ones I call the Tibetans, are like this too, but in a different way, in that they are very, very interested anyway, I guess I should say. They're very interested in helping the souls of human beings on Earth, but they don't, they're not able to help a lot of us because they are so far advanced from us that, there's not a lot of people who are able to receive the energetic gifts that they have to offer. One thing you learn in out-of-body travel real early on is that knowledge is not information, it's vibration. And so a lot of times when these extraterrestrial beings are coming to us, they're bringing us something of knowledge within energy. And so these forms are coming to us with the intention of seeding an energy within us that gives us the impetus and the grace to exceed to a higher thrust of human being. But we have to be receptive to receive it as well. But we have lots of neat things. I've seen, I've been taken to Jupiter. I was allowed to lay in the rings of Saturn. I was allowed to lie on the side of a star and take in its vibration. Many, many things of that nature. And a lot of the out-of-body travels that you go through, especially as you go into the rites of passage and the initiations and the mysteries and beyond, you'll find yourself in the starry heavens because many of these passages involve these heavenly bodies. The sun itself has an immortal energy that you will go through ritual passages to accept some of that energy into your spirit. And so all of these things have aspects that have something to offer us energetically, which propels us higher. And so all of these things are, we literally, in the out-of-body experience, you are literally becoming all that is, all things that exist. You're going to experience all of that. So whether it's a blade of grass, whether it is our sun, you're going to experience it, become it for a time in order to take upon yourself and within yourself some of the knowledge of that existence, of what it means to be that blade of grass, what it means to be that beaming sun, and all of these things come together and help us to propel forward into higher states of knowledge and wisdom.
Well, and that leads to a follow-up question that Suidan also had, and I'm going to kind of paraphrase a little bit, and that being, how do you know that the things that you are experiencing, both in those type of travels and I guess in general in any kind of out-of-body travel, how are you sure that what you're experiencing is a true phenomena or a true thing, a true event, a true place happening outside of you and not just your own perception of it?
Well, that's a great question, and I'll kind of turn the question around to answer it, which is that I often tell people if you have to ask somebody if you've had an out-of-body experience, then you haven't had one. Because if you've had an out-of-body experience, there's no question, you know you've had it. It's that powerful. And so the fact that you've had an experience that is of this nature is not going to be in question. But it's absolutely true, and Suadon, it's very true. There's a lot of discernment involved in understanding the experiences and what they mean to us. And so we have to undergo a lot of mystical training, but then also a lot of study, and we're often given a great deal of direction as to what do we study to learn this discernment, to become better at understanding what we are being shown when we have some of these experiences. Because yes, we can absolutely misperceive the meaning of these different things, but when you have a genuine out-of-body experience, you know, the vibrational state alone is something that is so profound and so intense. You cannot deny that. It's just you've either had it or you have not had it. And so, you know, so people will say, well, I might have had an experience here, but I'm not sure. It's like, okay, well, people do have snippets of memories of out-of-body experiences in lucid dreams and in other types of things. But when you have a fully conscious out-of-body experience, you will not have to ask if you've had it, because it's that conscious. It's that vivid. It's not something you can even really question in that regard. Where you want to be careful, though, is you got to have your discernment and be forming that discernment to understand what you're being shown.
We have another question that comes in from Nancy in the Midnight Society Facebook group. The phrase, "I signed up for that in this life," she said, is interesting. She wants to know if that means you can see all of your past and future selves as part of this.
Actually, you can. It's a lengthy process. It's not necessarily something that happens all in one fell swoop, but ironically, part of the grand phases of the soul, and by the way, we are releasing the documentary, The Grand Phases of the Soul, at the TCCHE conference this year, and it'll be released for everyone in mid-September. But a big part of the Grand Phases of the Soul culminates at the end of the initiations into the mysteries. And what happens in that period is that all of the lifetimes that you've ever had are coming together into your one construct here. The knowledge of those lifetimes is also entering into you. So, whereas you may have started this journey as one fragmented human being, all of a sudden the knowledge of everything you have ever lived is entering into you. This is a huge part of the initiations. So yes, everything you have been in your past lives and your future lives will not only become made known to you, they will then, that knowledge will enter into you, and your higher self is a big part of this, because the knowledge of those lifetimes not only needs to come into you, but it has to culminate in a way that is fruitful for your further propelment. So absolutely, but it usually takes time. They come in pieces. So you'll start remembering portions, maybe even of one particular life that may be representative of many. And then you may start seeing recurring themes in other lifetimes, and you're like, wow, that seems like that's very similar. Those are the same souls as that previous life, and that's a very similar problem. Or we're doing the same thing, it's just a different, formula there, but it's the same 3 people or the same 4 people, or you see what I'm saying? And so you're going to see these over time. It might not happen very quickly. A lot of times it's slow, but then at the very end, it all comes in like a huge rushing wind. It's a beautiful thing.
So I'm somebody that didn't really understand the greater side of consciousness until I started doing programs like this. And I've kind of come up with an idea in my mind that, consciousness in general is like the internet. It's out there and it connects everybody together, and that our bodies are kind of our individual workstations to be able to access that and we can utilize it to run systems within our localized machine, but that there's still this greater interconnected network that it's all a part of. Would you say that there is a greater collective connection between all of the consciousness here on this planet and even beyond?
Yeah, and I think your description is fabulous. It's really good because, and ironically, most things that manifest here on the ground start in the spiritual world. They start in the heavens, and the internet started in the heavens. All great acts of science, technology, art, all these things, they come in from the higher realms first. And so this whole idea came from universal being in the first place. But the way you just said that was perfect, because that's exactly, that is exactly how we see it manifest in, the greater consciousness of all life, Yeah.
Well, and I think that it's a good analogy because it helps us kind of understand that there can be the greater collective, but that it doesn't negate the individual. And I think a lot of people, they hear about, one kind of collected consciousness and they feel like they have to give up their individuality to be part of that, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
No, definitely not. And we have to remember that there is a purpose for the individuality. There is a reason why we are manifesting in this way. And so, no, that is absolutely not the case. But what we are doing when these processes are coming into play is that we are taking into our current manifestation these bits of information that are very helpful for us to actually make this particular manifestation not only function better, but proceed further and have a better life, basically. Not only have a better life here, but a better life continuing, the eternal life which continues from here as well, because in the spirit world, in the out-of-body travel world where we go, life is life. So our lives here and our lives that we have in the afterlife are all connected. So when we are improving our life here, we are also improving that life in the hereafter. It's all a connected continuum. There's not an end. There's no end point. It's just a different conjunction of the soul's journey. But what we're doing is adding knowledge, wisdom, and information, and then also vibration that aids us in achieving higher things, achieving things that are more productive for our personal goals, our personal mission in this lifetime. So none of these things takes away from who you are as an individual now. They only add to it. It only enhances what you can become and what you are, and how you can manifest it to its fullest potential.
So when we're able to go to the different places that we can go, whether it be through space, through time, wherever it is, do we have the ability to influence where it is that we are in any way?
Absolutely, we do. There's so many different ways. First of all, when you think of a place or a person, you instantly go there. So this is, travel 101 when you're of your body for sure. But then there's also, there are so many forms of alteration which occur in the out-of-body travel realms where we might be called in or asked to assist in helping other souls. And so, yes, there are a number of ways that we might be able to influence, but we can only do this under the will of the universal good, which guides it.
Okay.
And that's what's important to know, because we don't do it on our own. We are led by this greater knowledge and this greater spirit. All
right, so let's kind of get let's kind of get into some ideas of techniques of how people can do this, because I've tried and I have had zero luck with it. And I don't know why that is, that some people it's just, you know, they can do it and they can easily do it and it happens by accident. And then other people who are trying to do it, they have trouble, being able to get to that point. Is it just a matter of, you know, is there a stumbling block of belief?
You know, a lot of it is really more related to patience. You know, it is not a process. You know, when you're trying to experience out of body travel, especially in the beginning, you have to be very disciplined and diligent with the practice. Most of the time, there are some people who are just gifted, who, you know, they're gonna just, wow, I just did that and it's no big deal, you know, but that's not the norm. Probably most people require a lot of time for practice. I tell people that they should be spending at least like 3 hours in their meditation times, because that's how much time your body needs to get to the level of consciousness necessary to actually detach the physical body and the spirit, the consciousness separation that's required to have an out-of-body experience. And so a lot of times it's just not understanding the kind of the commitment required, you know. You know, there's a lot of some of the basics that I would say for people is, first of all, you want to seek out the silence, shut out the noise. So, you know, we live in a pretty noisy world because everyone's connected to the internet now and to a lot of devices. So you want to do whatever you can to create a space where you can have the quiet. And then you have to really kind of put some effort into contemplating the purpose of what you're doing. You know, what it is that you're doing, approaching the path with the humility of understanding that this is a spiritual tool. It's not just, you know, not just something interesting to play around with, you know. So understanding the purpose and cultivating the patience. And you're going to be doing a lot of the things you're going to be doing. And again, I have a lot of books on this. I have about 10 books on the how-to. You'll start having the experiences within the first book, but the how-to books go through the processes of as you go into the deeper mysteries in the out-of-body training. But you can download all my books for free at outofbodytravel.org, so that helps. So you can go to the how-to section. You can download Come to Wisdom's Door and download the Mysteries of the Redemption, and then just start with those books. The Mysteries of the Redemption is programmed in a way where people actually start having spontaneous experiences just by reading the book. I don't fully understand the process, but I've been told by my spiritual teachers that it was programmed this way to make possible for people who read it these things. And by making it possible, it opens a door for them, and we've seen it over, you know, the last couple of decades where this is actually what is occurring with many, many, many people. So that is one simple way to get started. But the biggest thing is, you know, we're following the paths that have been left behind by the prophets, saints, mystics, saints, and sages and ascetics from world religions and cultures and tribes from all ages and all the world. And it's so simple because it's all the same. It's prayer, it's meditation, and it is silence, you know. And so, you know, the prayer is when we are communicating with God, talking to God. Meditation is when we are allowing God to speak back to us. And that we have to have this silence and the reading of spiritual texts, you know, because what we are doing is, it's like we're feeding the soul, so to speak, you know. So we want to feed the soul with the reading of spiritual texts. Many of the great spiritual writers have talked about the importance of the daily spiritual reading. And I put a lot of emphasis on this meditation period of giving yourself a block. And I know a lot of people have trouble doing this because everyone's busy, and I know that, but I'm just telling you what works. So you find a way. It doesn't have to be every day, but when you do your practice, try to find some slots where you can put away 3 hours to do your meditation practice. And I try to get people to focus on a simple mindfulness meditation, and I have them lie down rather than do sitting meditation. The reason for this is because if you're sitting and your body is actually preparing to go into the separation state, you're just going to fall down and knock yourself out of the state. So you want to be lying down. And then you're going to be doing a simple mindfulness type of meditation, focusing on your breath in and out. And when thoughts come and arise, you just let them go. You don't focus on them. You just let them go. So we have a very simple type of practice, but it is one that you have to be willing to put some time, energy, and attention on over periods of time. And then there are other things that you're going to be doing as well. So, but this is where you start. So, you know what I mean?
Well, no, it sounds good, like a good place to start to me. And we're actually going to take our next break here coming up. So during that break, if you want to go to midnight.fm and you can click over to Marilyn's website there. If you click on her photo, that will take you over to her website. And then when you're there, you can go right to all of her books. And as she said, you can download those all for free. They're all right there for you on her website. So if you want to do that during the break, I highly recommend it. And of course, they'll always be linked up right at her page on midnight.fm going forward. If you are a member at midnight.fm, which you can do for just $4.99 a month, that's the lowest level of membership right there. That will give you access to all of the archives from Midnight Society, which means you'll always be able to access those past guest pages, including the audio from the episode, which will be right there for you. All right, we're going to take our next break, and then we'll be back with more Midnight Society right here on midnight.fm.
Call into the show. Dial 508-322-1985. That's 508-322-1985. Or Skype midnight.fm.
And we're back with more Midnight Society here on midnight.fm. And tonight we are talking about traveling outside of your body with our guest Marilyn Hughes. Again, if you want to find out more about her, just click on midnight.fm. The link is there. If you want to pick up her books there, as she said, you can download them for free. I also dropped the link in the Midnight Society Facebook group as well, so that if you would like to be able to grab those for yourself, you can do that during the course of the program. Marilyn, another question came in from Nancy, going back to her question about being able to see all your past and future lives. She wants to know if there is a limited number to the amount of lives one soul could live.
Not that I'm aware of. What I have seen has definitely been that, any soul could be, a small amount, or it could be a huge amount. It's just dependent upon the journey of that particular soul. So it's, as far as I know, there is no limit. We're eternal beings. We continue to exist. And so we exist in different ways, in different eons, in different worlds, in different lifetimes.
Now, going back to the idea of being able to do this for yourself and to be able to learn how to do it, is it something where, once you get it, once it kind of connects with you, does it happen anytime that you want? Can you access it instantaneously, or is it something that you need to exercise and keep working to perfect?
Well, it's a little bit of both. You know, once you do get it, it does become more natural to your daily life, but you do need to cultivate it. You do need to constantly cultivate it, because these parts, you know, the prayer, the meditation, and the spiritual reading are all going to continue to be part of maintaining the zone that you need to be in to be receptive to receiving it. You know, continuing to have an area of silence in your life that allows for you to receive is also going to be part of this. And so, absolutely. There's also the sense, too, people do go through dry periods, and when they go through this, they can become very discouraged, but this is very, very normal. Even when you read from the many, many accounts of the saints from throughout time and the mystics from throughout time, they all speak of the dry periods, and this is normal. So, for the most part, yes, it does become easier to access. At the same time, I always tell people to allow God to direct your experiences, because we have a tendency, I want to do this, or I want to do that, or I think I need to do this. But when we allow the universal mind to direct our journey, we are allowing ourselves to actually expand into things we would never think up ourselves. The journey will be so much greater, so much more fascinating, so much more huge, you know, evolving than we could ever think up. So remember that allowing the universal mind to control the journey for us is a positive thing to do. When we try to control it, we will actually hinder ourselves. So a bit of surrender to God's divine will is absolutely imperative to make the most progress in the spiritual journey in this lifetime.
So I would think that if you are leaving your body and being able to travel to all of these places, you would run into other people doing the same. Do you ever encounter other out-of-body travelers?
Yes, you do.
And what are the interactions like?
It's funny. Yeah, because usually it's like, oh, you're another astral traveler. It's kind of, you know, it's kind of like you might run into somebody walking down the street when you're walking your dog. Oh, hey, you got your dog out. Me too.
Yeah, I'm thinking when you're driving your motorcycle and you run into another motorcycle, you know, you're both supposed to do the motorcycle wave, which is, you know, you put your hand down and you kind of wave that way. You can't put your hand up and wave because then you'll look like a geek. So you got to kind of hold your hand down below the handlebars and wave. And I think that, you know, there's also the Jeep wave. People that drive Jeeps wave to each other. So I can see that, you know, the need to connect.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, you'll run into people who are astral projecting, but you'll also run into people that you know are like subconsciously traveling in their sleep. And you know, you'll run into people that you know are deceased, or people that you know are lost souls or ghosts. And you'll run into spirits that you know are like wandering spirits on the astral plane who are deceased. You will run into souls in purgatories that you know are doing purgatorial, you know, runs. You'll run into so many things. Absolutely.
And so I think that that's pretty interesting that, you know, that you will encounter others. Can you kind of team up with other people? Can you make a plan to both leave your body and meet up in that space?
People do that. I've heard that from many people, and I've done that with a few people. And yes, it can be done. But you're also going to have, there's teaming up that you might not think of. Like, for instance, we all have our bands of alliances on the other side. So as you start having regular out-of-body travel experiences, you're going to be teaming up with members of your bands of alliances, some of whom may actually be people you know down below, but some of them may not, you know, have a physical counterpart down here, but they are spiritual teachers, spiritual guides, guardian angels, or otherwise, even deceased relatives or ancestors that you're working with in a group to assist and aid other souls who are in their subconscious dreaming. And so you'll be working together to do those kinds of things.
I like that idea. I like that you can, have a team that can try and do different things. Now, we're talking, though, about encountering other living beings. Do you ever encounter any beings in that realm that are formerly living people?
Oh, yes. You mean in terms of deceased? Yes. Because, anyone who's doing the round of the purgatories has already deceased, and ghosts and lost souls are deceased. If you enter into the hells or the purgatories at all, you'll be dealing with deceased souls. There are many souls, and it's interesting because you use the word living and dead in the way that we do in the physical realm. In the spiritual realm, the term living and dead applies in a different way. So a soul that is living is a soul that is filled with light, whereas a soul that is dead is a soul that is filled with darkness. So you'll in that regard, you encounter souls that are alive and souls that are dead there all the time. But we also encounter this in the physical world, right? We see in the physical world souls that are filled with light and souls that are filled with darkness, and thus we can see the mirror image of what we have below exists above as well. So we absolutely experience souls who have crossed over. And in fact, one of the things I write a lot about in my books is because one of the things I do in particular is assist souls in their crossing over, but also in their afterlife journeys. So that can be like a 3 to 5 year commitment for certain souls. Can be a 2-week commitment for one, but 3 to 5 years for another, so it just depends. So we can be assisting in the afterlife process for a long period of time. And so there's a lot of that type of interaction with the souls of the deceased, working with the souls of the currently living in the physical world.
So I would want to think then that sometimes, I always look at it from a perspective of ghosts that we encounter here on this realm are them coming into our plane of existence. But perhaps it's possible that when we go to a place where we have these hauntings and we have these ghosts that we can encounter, maybe we're almost leaving ourselves a little bit in those locations.
Well, what you're seeing with ghosts and lost souls, and you're dealing with an attachment that someone has to a location. So there's a little bit of both. You're walking into a place where some type of soul has developed an attachment to this location or this home or this space or this building or this land, and they are not moving forward. They're not going towards God. They're not moving. They're staying stuck in whatever that end of life moment they had was. And so in the sense that they have claimed that moment in time and that house at that moment in time, they believe that it is their space. They do believe that. But in reality, time has continued forward. They have just stood still. And so another person is coming in who absolutely in the current time-space continuum does belong there, is coming in, but this lost soul does not recognize that because in their limited ability to comprehend it, they believe that what their understanding of their dominion over that space is still it's the constraint that they live by, but it's not what the eternal law would state to them. And that's why, I have a whole book on ghosts and lost souls in the Mystic Knowledge series where you can learn a lot about how this works. Because what we're doing with situations like that is we are assisting those souls in realizing that they have died and that they no longer have dominion over this location and that they need to actually move forward, and it's actually a good thing for them to move forward. There's a lot of fear about moving forward for souls who are lost in situations like that. And sometimes for them, time can happen like really fast. So like a soul that may have died in the 1800s may inhabit a building 200 years later, and it seems like a split second has gone by to that soul. And so there's this time-space continuum disturbance that is kind of bopping into each other when the haunting is occurring between the lost soul and the people who are currently in the home. It's complicated, but it can be handled because God handles everything. And there's a whole bunch of ways that this is done. There's a bunch of information on my site about how to handle the ghosts and lost souls, the wandering spirits, because a lot of this has to do with beings who don't realize they have died, or they are attached to a particular moment in their life. They're traumatized by the moment of their death, or they had a sudden death and they never really realized that they passed. There's a lot of these kinds of reasons behind hauntings, or also the kinds that the ones that, the Amityville horror types where acts of pure evil have created, created a portal, so to speak, a portal to hell. And that is a completely different scenario and is handled totally differently.
So when you say that we help them, and you're talking about being able to utilize this type of travel to go to these different places, does that mean that we would physically ferry them? Would we almost become psychopomps to help them get from where they're stuck to where they're supposed to be? Would we bring them there and guide them to that place?
What we generally do in I'll tell you what my role is, because this is something that I'm called to do. So my portion of it is that I am called in, and then I am filled with the emotions, the feelings, the fear, the pain, whatever it is that they're feeling. So like if they're terrified because a bomb just went off. So because, they're reliving the moment of their death over and over and over again. I'm going to feel what they're feeling, whatever it is that's holding them there. So I'm going to become very familiar with what is this predominant emotion that's really got a grip on them. Then I'm going to be shown the eternal energetic truth about what's really going on here. Okay, so perhaps this soul doesn't realize they've crossed over. Or in another instance, this particular soul is still very attached to a lost love that she never married, and she keeps reliving a particular moment early on in her life, and she's just really attached and not moving forward. It can be anything, anywhere in between those spectrums. What my job next is going to be is that I start communicating telepathically to the soul, explaining to them, yes, you have actually died. You crossed over. You are no longer living in the physical world. And these are the things that you need to understand. And so, then we discuss what actually happened. So sometimes you're dealing with a soul who's involved with acts of violence or acts of violence committed against them. So you're dealing with those issues. You're dealing with all these things. You're preparing them and raising their vibration by making them aware of things. As their vibration raises, you're talking to them about the light of God. You're telling them how they need to go to that light of God to proceed on their journey. And as you're talking to them, their own vibration rises up enough so that they are able to then see their own guardian angels, who will then take them the rest of the way. So see what happens with a lot of the lost souls and the ghosts. There are many, many different types of situations, but this is one way. What happens with a lot of them is that their vibration never goes high enough for them to actually see the angels and the angelic assistance that is there for them. So they need assistance to rise their vibration enough to receive assistance. They're blocking their own ability to move forward because of an attachment, a fetter, a craving, something, or sometimes just true trauma, because people have undergone really traumatic things sometimes at the moment of their death. And so once you raise that and they're able to see either their angels or the light of God, you're able to direct them and they move forward, and then there's a whole slew of other helpers who help them to go the rest of the way.
So have you been able to, in these travels, have you been able to visit heaven for yourself? Is that off limits to people?
Yes, I've been there many times, and it's beautiful beyond words.
And do you get to visit with other past loved ones, or do you see anybody else when you're there?
Yes, you see all the souls that inhabit the heavens, including, like I said, extraterrestrial beings from other worlds who inhabit the heavens. But a neat thing too is that you meet your own ancestors. I talked about this in a book I wrote called Galactica, where I started meeting ancestors that I didn't know existed, because I didn't know that much about my genealogy or my, the family tree. And so that was just such a neat experience to start meeting the ancestral line of, and seeing how involved they are in aiding us in our journey here. Our ancestors, not just, one generation back, but 4 or 5 generations back, that they are still working to help and assist, their progeny. But also the other thing that people might be surprised about is during the, initiations into the mysteries, when you're going through this actually goes on into the second. There's rites of the Ascension that you go into, and this is where this happens. After you've had, all of the past lives and future lives that come into you, and along with your higher self, there is a point in the rites of the Ascension where you actually meet all of your loved ones from all of your lifetimes. It's like the ultimate family reunion. Beautiful, beautiful experience, something so beyond words, where all of a sudden you're meeting all these people, and for a moment you're like, wait a minute, I know them all, but yet I don't know them all. And then the memory comes back, and it's like, I remember I loved you back in, 1241, by golly. And, and that was my mother. And this was, and all these hundreds of people are there, and you are literally surrounded by this heritage of hundreds of lifetimes of souls who you have loved and who have loved you. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
We're getting some questions in the Midnight Society Facebook group from people asking about the idea of lost souls, of, how do you know that they are lost and that this isn't just what they've chosen for themselves to be in this form?
Well, that's a good question. And this goes back to, again, energetic truth. And, you'll find out a lot more about this if you read the book Ghosts and Lost Souls, which is in the Mystic Knowledge series, and you can download it for free. It'll explain this in more detail. But when we are in the out-of-body travel state and we are called into service, and now I'll just explain this shortly. Creation requires us to give back to creation that which creation gives to us. And so as we progress spiritually, we are always given service that we have to then give back to others because we are being given so much. So this is one of the ways in which I was given service to offer. So you're taken into situations and you are given, infused with the knowledge of what is going on. It's an infusion of the knowledge. That is how you know. This is where the energetic truth is implanted into you, and then you know, okay, this is what's happening. And the soul that you're dealing with is not a soul who's content and okay, and this is a soul who's in turmoil and who is begging for help. This is someone who wants your help, and they're always very grateful when they realize that you've been able to relieve them of their suffering and liberate them from their suffering. And so it is this infusion of the knowledge. The Holy Spirit comes in and tells us what this soul needs, why this soul needs it, and how we are to deliver it. And that is how we do it. It's a miraculous and beautiful process, and we learn this through mystical training. In the third book of the Mysteries of the Redemption series called Medicine Woman Within a Dream, that's called the Alteration Pathway. This is where you can read about how you learn this whole process of how we go in and learn to alter reality from energy as it is about to hit the ground, so that we are making greater futures possible according to the will of the higher mind. And it's infused knowledge. It's a mystical theology term, but it applies here.
Okay. Well, we're going to take our next break here. I don't want to get into anything a little bit too deep before we are up against it. But when we come back on the other side, we can talk more about the idea of ghosts. And then as we continue on, there are some other things that I want to work into the discussion as well, including spirit guides, and guardian angels. You had mentioned a few times spiritual warfare, so we can get into that a little bit. And also we'll get a little bit deeper into the idea of extraterrestrials as we continue on with the discussion tonight. But again, with just a real quick break, tomorrow night, by the way, we will be talking with Dr. Bruce Goldberg about exploring the fifth dimension, parallel universes, teleportation, and time travel. He will share with us his case histories and research, proving that, in his opinion, that time travel exists, including how Egypt was developed from 4 different sources: Lemuria, Atlantis, ETs, and time travelers, all coming together to help create the ancient Egypt culture. So we'll talk about all that and more with Dr. Bruce Goldberg tomorrow night, but still plenty to discuss with Marilyn Hughes here tonight. And don't forget, immediately following Midnight Society tonight, you can tune in to the debut of Fright Day right here on Midnight.fm, and the continuing discussion can go on in the Midnight Society Facebook group if you want to talk about that show as it's airing. And also, if you are in the Discord server, if you're a member at the elite or insider levels at Midnight.fm, and you have access to the Discord server, I created a channel in there to discuss Fright Day as that's going on. So feel free to jump in there if you're a member, and you can discuss the program as it goes on. Really looking forward to that. I'll be listening as I edit tonight's edition of Midnight Society, which will be back in just a few moments here on Midnight.fm.
Call into the show. Dial 508-322-1985. That's 508-322-1985. Or Skype midnight.fm.
we are back with more Midnight Society here on Midnight.fm. Tonight we are talking with Marilyn Hughes about adventures beyond the body. We're talking about being able to astral travel, to travel in out-of-body experiences, and some of the different entities and beings that you can encounter in doing so. And we've been talking for the last little bit about the idea of ghosts, and I think that there's still some things that we want to discuss about ghosts, as well as getting into some of the other beings that you can encounter. And Marilyn, when it comes to ghosts, one of the things that I've encountered when I have dealt with them is that so often they are, more often than not, they're completely unaware of the position that they're in. So, I mean, how much convincing an explanation do you have to do when you encounter one to let them know what it is that has happened to them? Or do you just bypass that and just help them get to the place where they're supposed to be and not worry about having to get into the nuts and bolts of why?
Well, it depends on the situation, really. There are certain situations where you're able to explain a little bit to them, and that's all it takes. And then there are some situations where there's more resistance and you have to explain a little more. And there are even other situations where you may not have to explain anything. You're instigated to just literally toss them up, so to speak, into the arms of their guardian angels, because words are not helpful at that time. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it's different for every situation. But yes, you're right. In most situations, they're not aware of their circumstance unless you're dealing with a darker situation, which happens, where then you're dealing with, you've got a whole different intention there. So
now, there's a question keeps popping up from some of the listeners, going back and forth in the Midnight Society. And that is that, it seems that your experiences are shaped by your beliefs, or maybe your beliefs are shaped by your experiences, one way or the other, but that it seems to be of a particular, belief set. And is that just your experience because it's been through that lens for you? Would it be different for people that might be of a different belief or a different religion than the experiences that you have had?
Well, the thing that I'd like to say about that is that I came to the particular faith practice that I'm in due to my experiences, and it was the last possible thing I would have considered. I studied every world religion and path, and would not have even considered studying the one that I ended up following. And I was led in this particular direction. I can say that I also have seen this happen with many other people who are having, very profound out-of-body experiences, that they find a lot of similarities here. If you actually read my experiences, you're going to see that I have a lot of experiences that go across the boundaries of all world religions and tribal cultures, and it's basically the path of these mystics from throughout time. But yes, I was led in a particular direction. And in my view, what I have seen with other people is there are certain things that are very commonly important for the mystic path that seem to direct people in that way, regardless of their belief system, when they seriously follow the path. I remember speaking to one gentleman who really took issue with this point for many, many, many years. And then he became terminally ill. And shortly before his death, he had a near-death experience. And he, a person who often made fun of the things that I shared and talked about, came to me very seriously and said, I had this near-death experience, and this is what I was shown. And it was all of this very traditional stuff from this path that we're speaking of. And he was totally shocked. And, but there are certain things that are inalienable truths that, it's just truth whether or not we like it or not, or whether or not we, so it's just the way it is, in the mystical spheres, there is the royal family of God. It is headed by Christ, but all of the prophets, saints, mystics, sages, saints, and ascetics are part of this family. There's hundreds of them, thousands of them, and they work towards the redemption of humankind. So we are missing a point if we do not recognize that religion was founded upon earth for this purpose. It wasn't that religion was just a stupid idea. It was just that religion got sidetracked in many different ways across the world. It doesn't mean that it did not have a founding point that was good and of the light and of truth. And this is what we're trying to recapture, which is the birth point of the revelations, which is the out-of-body experiences that brought these things into the world. One of the books I wrote was Near-Death and Out-of-Body Experiences of the Prophets, Saints, Mystics, and Sages in World Religions, and it covers, those out-of-body experiences that were behind the founding of all the world religions, because we forget that that's what they were. That's what founded the world religions, was revelation, out-of-body experiences. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, no, that makes sense. But is it possible? And I don't want to have to put it on you either to explain the very nature of religion, but is it possible that, the beings that in your belief set is referred to as Christ or as God or as these different other angelic beings that could be there, that they could be a completely different thing to somebody else? It's still the same hierarchy. It's still the same idea behind it, but it just has a different name. Could these have been the same beings that had different names to other cultures in the multi generations before Christ, for example?
I think anything is possible because God is infinite. God is infinite and huge and beyond our ability to fathom. The one thing I've learned in out-of-body travel is never assume anything that you have not seen, because there is always more for us to know. And so never make the mistake of thinking that, you've got the whole picture, because you never do, because God is infinite in that way. So of course I think that's definitely possible. And it does not diminish in any sense the holiness of these other paths, because, I studied these as well, and I've written a lot about how, some of the experiences I had, like when I was given to touch the casket in the mystical realms that held the energies of the entire line of the Dalai Lamas, and how holy it was, and how it was just such an earth-shattering moment. Literally, it's this beautiful, gilded, ovular, it was oval casket, and there was a guardian who stood watch over the casket, and you had to have permission to go touch it. And just touching it, you were just filled with this holy awe of what the Dalai Lamas represented, what their purpose was, and who they were. It was just amazing, And then the other things that I've been given to see, like taken to Krishna and Radha's holy place, that the place that they live in, and it was beautiful. Everything was pink and lush, and all the flowers and all the beautiful things, and oh my gosh, but we can't forget that all of these things are holy. One of the most holy experiences that I ever had was with the medicine women from throughout all the ages, where literally all the medicine women from throughout all the ages had come and circled around me, and they were transforming me into a medicine woman. That was written about in Medicine Woman Within a Dream, about the Alteration Pathway. And this is where I was becoming capable of serving the realm And it was so unbelievably holy to be in the presence of these great holy women from literally ages and ages and ages of human history. So, we can't forget that just because one path is where I was led to place my final trust does not mean I do not honor all of them, and that I have not partaken of all of them, and that I do not love them all with this depth that I can't even put into words. Well, I wrote the Voice of the Prophets, which is the Encyclopedia of Ancient Sacred Texts, and I couldn't have done that without just being in love with the writings of all of them.
Well, I think this takes us into, we can kind of get into the idea then of spirit guides and guardian angels, because that is something that I think everybody feels, no matter what you believe, no matter what your religion is, or even if you don't have any and you just feel like you have some degree of spirituality. I think everybody kind of feels like there's somebody watching over them at times. And
yes,
but there's a difference between spirit guides and guardian angels, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely. Spiritual guides are more akin to spiritual teachers. Guardian angels are more where they're looking out for us, they're directing us, they're guiding us, and they're protecting us. Spiritual guides and spiritual teachers are more of the beings that will come and go. And the reason for this is because throughout our lives, we'll have different spiritual teachers that come in to teach us about different concepts that are important for us at different junctures along our path. Ironically, this is something where we can really tie it in with these ancient sacred texts and with these different religious paths, because most people, when they're experiencing the out-of-body travel journey, are going to find that they may have one teacher that comes in. Like, for instance, I'll just use my own path as an example. My first teacher was a teacher by the name of Emmanuel. He was not Christ. He was Emmanuel. He was a different being, and his purpose was to teach me about oneness. One of the next beings was a being by the name of Kutahe, who was an Asian teacher who was teaching me about some of the concepts that come with Buddhism and some of the Asian and Eastern philosophies. And then I had Chief Joseph, who came in and brought in the entire, alteration pathway and the medicine woman. And that was one of my favorite periods. It was such a beautiful time where I would go into the out-of-body travel state. I would wake up sitting by the fire, next to the teepee with Chief Joseph, and then I would hear the chanting of the holy men calling me into my next ritual passage. It was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. And then you would be taken in to experience, some of the great things written by Rumi, who exists as literally like a poetical strain in the mystical stream of life. But there's so many things. I went through these Egyptian, really lengthy, initiations into the mysteries through the Egyptian, things. And so, meeting with Hermes and with Thoth and with Isis and all of these ancient peoples, and bringing in the knowledge that they had from their period and from their mysteries and their rites and rituals. So, what happens in the out-of-body travel path, and this is what is so important to know, is that you are taking in all of it. You're not going to just be one piece. You're going to be all of it, And
so during that, in that state, in that out of body state, can you can you have free discourse and discussion with these guides and even with your guardian angels? Can you look to them while you're there for any advice that you may be hoping that they can give you when you're in your body, but you're unable to perceive?
Absolutely, you can do that. What you're going to want to do is one of the things you learn with out-of-body travel is always have paper and pen right next to where you are sleeping so that you can write things down the minute you come back, so that you can write down the exact words that were spoken so that you can go over that later. Because a lot of times their answer is going to be short, and it'll be short for that reason, because they want you to get it and be able to remember it and take it back. You can absolutely do that. You can absolutely do that. And of course, with our guardian angels, we often take for granted the fact that we can speak to our guardian angels, in our bodies. We can communicate with our guardian angels and ask for their assistance and their help for all sorts of things, even while in our bodies. We don't have to be out of our bodies to do that. That definitely applies in terms to our spiritual teachers. We want to seek out answers and guidance in the out-of-body travel state. But don't forget, there's so much that we can ask for help with from our guardian angels, whether or not you're having out-of-body experiences or not. But yes, you can. You can have these conversations with them, and there's such beautiful, meaningful things. And this is part of where, we talked about prayer, meditation, and spiritual reading. This is where you want to throw in your prayer. You want to throw these questions out in your prayer, because when you're sending that question up, you are literally energizing the teacher who can come to answer you. And that's part of the process, is remembering to ask for it and keep asking for it. It may take 2 or 3 weeks. It may take longer. It may take less, but that you ask for that question, and you consistently ask, and you're patient in asking and not ceasing to ask till that answer is able to be received by you. But absolutely.
And
yes.
That way, though, you have to receive it in a different way. You'd have to be kind of able to decipher it, though, right?
Yes, but there are times when there are different ways you might receive the answer. Some people might receive the answer in a dream, and then when they receive it in a dream, they may need to engage in some dream interpretation for sure. If you receive it in like one of these face-to-face dialogues where they actually tell you, then you're going to have more of a straightforward answer. So that's a little different. And then there are other ways too, like some people will have what are called interlocution type things, where that answer is kind of downloaded into them. So these there are different ways of receiving the answer, and of course discernment is required in all of it. And that's a big thing that I talk about in all of my books, the importance of this continual learning about discernment and how we discern the spirits, so that we can be very careful about that. Because you don't want to be having a deep conversation like with a lost soul or a wandering spirit. You want to be having that conversation with an actual spiritual teacher that is there for that purpose.
Now, these spiritual teachers, I mean, you mentioned a few of them, but for the most part, they have been corporeal beings here on this planet?
No.
Okay.
No.
So what about? So none of these. So you won't get advice then from people who have previously been incarnated here on Earth.
Sometimes you will.
Okay.
Sometimes you will, but there's Antonique, who is a Pleiadian teacher who also came. There are literally tens and tens of teachers that I had who are from higher spheres of existence who I wouldn't even know if they, at some point in their evolution, were on Earth. But right now, no, they're very far removed from Earth. Most of your spiritual teachers are not going to be necessarily people who were once on Earth. They're generally going to be beings from a higher realm. You will have once in a while, like Chief Joseph came and did this, he was kind of like director of the whole thing. He brought it all together, but there were all of these spirits, of the old ones, of the grandfathers and the grandmothers, from the ancient ones, and he was bringing them all to me, and he was like the director of the whole thing. And so you're going to be dealing with things like this. The prophets, the saints, the mystics, the sages, the ascetics. You're going to be, some of these, yes, are going to be people who have been on Earth but are no more.
Well, I think that for a lot of us, we've probably heard or received messages from some of these guides and just not understood that we were being given this advice, that we're being led in this direction.
Well, that could be. Definitely, that can happen. And, we do receive guidance sometimes that is hard to interpret. And so that can be frustrating because sometimes we don't know. And so, what we can do is we just jot it down and keep the journals of what you are told, because what you'll see is that if you keep those things over time, sometimes you can figure things out if you have it all written down that you would not otherwise understand, because when you go back and look at it within the context of the other things that you've been shown, it all of a sudden makes sense.
Okay. We're going to be taking a break here in a few moments. When we come back on the other side, I want to talk more about the idea of spiritual warfare and kind of, because you've referenced it a few times, and I want to get into what that all means. And then we can talk about some of these extraterrestrials that you've been referencing as well, too, and how they all fit into this as well. And if anybody would like to go and find out more about Marilyn's work, about her research, about her books, just go to midnight.fm, and that will give you all of the information that you need right there. But I just want to let everybody know before we go to the break about a very special broadcast that's coming up next week. Now, normally we make you wait until Sunday to find out what's happening with next week's programs. And of course, we will announce that on Sunday like we do each and every week. You will be able to follow us on social media at midnight.dot.fm on both Facebook and Twitter. And on Sunday afternoon or evening at some point, depending on the schedule, we will get next week's lineup of programs out to you so that you can plan how you want to listen. But I'm going to break protocol a little bit and let you know that next Friday, you definitely want to listen to the program live, because next Friday will be the first ever remote broadcast of Midnight Society. I will be leaving the comfy confines of my home studio and taking the show on the road as part of our initiative of wanting to get out to some haunted places and broadcasting live from there. So it's going to be a huge week next week. We're going to have Tripping on Legends debuting. That's going to be part of the new Tuesday lineup coming up on midnight.fm. We're also going to have another program that'll be returning to the airwaves next week as well. It's a program that you may have heard of in the past before. You may have been familiar with the program Amy on the Radio. Well, that will be back next Wednesday. And of course, we will continue on with the programs that we've already added in, but we're going to wrap up the Midnight Society week next week by broadcasting live from the Oliver House in Middleborough, Massachusetts, one of my favorite haunted locations, and one that I've had tons of experiences at. So next Friday we will be there live, and I will be interviewing Christy Parrish, who runs the paranormal events over at the Oliver House, as well as some of her staff members, and we'll be talking about the different experiences they've had there, as well as getting the history. But as I said, we'll be there live during the program, so who knows what could happen. there could actually be paranormal phenomena taking place while we are broadcasting live. So it should be a really cool thing. If all goes well, it should work out perfectly. We'll see what happens, but tune in next Friday for that because, it could go haywire too. All right, well, we have another segment coming your way with Marilyn Hughes and a lot to discuss. We'll also take your calls at 508-322-1985. More Midnight Society in just a few moments here on Midnight.fm.
Call into the show. Dial 508-322-1985. That's 508-322-1985. Or Skype midnight.fm.
We are back, our final segment tonight with our guest Marilyn Hughes. We will also, don't forget, have the debut of Fright Day here on Midnight.fm immediately following Midnight Society. So when this program is over, don't go anywhere because Fright Day will be starting and you're going to want to check that out for yourself. But we still have plenty to discuss with Marilyn before time is up. And if you would like to call in, again, that number, 508-322-1985. Tim at midnight.fm. If you want to email Midnight Society with Tim Weisburg Facebook group, also a great place to post questions in the nightly show thread as well. And one of the questions, Marilyn, came in from Lucia, who was checking out your website and had a question about you have a series of books from the Out of Body Travel Foundation regarding Michael Jackson's afterlife experiences. And if you could give us an idea of what that's all about.
Oh, yeah. There's a trilogy about on the Michael Jackson afterlife experiences. Ironically, the day that Michael Jackson passed, I think it was the day after, he came to me and told me he wanted to write these. And I wrote about in the book how I responded to him and said, I will not do it unless I absolutely know that this is like, the will of God. And I had a beautiful vision the next day where I was shown that this was the case. And it turned into a really beautiful journey following Michael's afterlife experience. And, one of the things I often tell people is that series of books would have made just as much sense as, calling it Every Man's Afterlife Journey, because his experiences were so beautiful and very much in line with what many afterlife journeys are like. It followed the first year, literally, up until the anniversary of his death. And it was the anniversary of his death. You'll see the final vision that I had of him on that anniversary on the website. And that was what made up this trilogy of the three volumes of the afterlife adventures of Michael. But it was a very meaningful, very beautiful journey that he shared with me.
I mean, I know that he was somebody who had a lot of interest in the spiritual side. He had a lot of interest in the occult. He did a lot over the course of his life to try and kind of downplay that a little bit, but at the same time, you only have to look and see songs like Thriller and Ghosts and some of the other songs that he did later on where there was a pretty good supernatural bend to a lot of them, that he definitely seemed to connect with this world in some way.
Yes, he did. And I didn't know that much about him because I was not a fan of his music until this experience occurred. And then I got to know his music and discovered some of those things that you just mentioned, as well as some of his other things that I really liked, which was, he had something in Moscow, Stranger in Moscow. I really think that's a beautiful song. And You Are Not Alone. And then some of the other things that he did that were really beautiful. some of this, he did one that with the angel. I can't remember what it was now. But he did do some things where he tried to mimic the, ironically talking about the guardian angel theme. There's the one video that is available on YouTube, which is the angel, the song about the angel, and they have the angel that comes and wraps him with the wings. So he was definitely, aware and interested in this to some degree during his life, and it was coming through in his art. But his journey was just very beautiful. He went through a lot of his, the issues that he had in life, and the fears and the anger, and he had to purge a lot of these things and just go through the same types of purifications that we all go through after death. And, it was very beautiful, very heartfelt, very moving journey that I was very honored to experience with him. And, but what I'd also say about that is that I've had a lot of really beautiful, moving experiences with souls in their afterlife journeys, and they are all so beautiful and moving. And we are really so much more alike one another than we realize. And that's definitely one of the things I've learned, not only from my own experiences, but also from hearing from thousands and thousands of people from around the world and the experiences that they have, whether they're out-of-body experiences near death or the experiences that they have in terms of the struggles in their life. We are all so much more alike than we know. And I saw that even with the afterlife experiences of Michael Jackson. I think a lot of people would be surprised when they read it, how real his experiences are, that he's just a normal person having the normal afterlife journey like any of us would.
Well, I mean, that kind of brings up some questions about his life. I mean, did he address at all you mentioned the troubles that he had in his life. Did he address at all the accusations against him, and whether or not he had to pay any kind of penance for that if it was true?
Well, he addressed certain things, and I don't feel like I can say anything with, I'm not the authority on, his sins or whatever, you know what I mean? But he did, the way that he had definitely conveyed to me, extreme regret about the drug addiction, and he took full responsibility for that drug addiction. He did not seem to, feel that Dr. Murray, was, culpable as much as he was. It was, in his mind, he knew that he had to take full responsibility for the drug problems that he had. And he did, and he took that fully. He talked a little bit about his marriage to Lisa Marie Presley. That's in the 3rd volume where he talks about that. I believe she was the love of his life. And, I was very honored that I was allowed to meet with one of his grandfathers in the afterlife. And I was shown some of the things from his previous, from his ancestry, and what it was, from the, line and going back to, it was just beautiful going back to Africa, going back through the ancestral line and seeing how all of this came together. It was just really a beautiful journey. We did not really address, the bigger accusations that were made against him. We did not address that fully, but I have to say that in my experience, I did not feel that it happened, but I am, like I said, I am not the authority on that. I don't know. I wasn't there, so I can't really say that because I wasn't there.
Right. I mean, and it was a hard thing for me as a Michael Jackson fan to even have to, address the accusations. And of course, when the first the first one comes out, you always want to, give the accuser the benefit of belief. But, when the first one comes out, they start painting a narrative and they're like, okay, I can see where maybe it's possible that it's just somebody, trying to milk him for money. But when it happens again and again and again, I can see how it's an issue. So we'll just kind of leave Michael Jackson aside because it's going to be controversial.
And the other thing, too, is just to remember from an afterlife standpoint that I think is important for people to understand is that when we cross over, the things for which we are accountable, we do have to go through our own purgation. So for that which he was accountable, he would undergo purgation for that, just as we all will. So if there's, I think that is an important thing to say.
Sure. I mean, where was he coming from when he spoke to you?
He was coming from a really beautiful place of love.
So he wasn't in hell?
No. And, so, I mean, we went to the banquet of the Lamb. There were beautiful experiences with Christ. We went through some purgatorial things that were not great, but they were not terrible either. He was going through some, purifications in relation to some misunderstandings and misperceptions he had, that he had to, rectify. Anyone who goes from this world to the next with fame is going to have to rectify some of that because, we're all the same. So that kind of stuff has to be peeled away, and it is. And then there's also, I remember this one experience that was really beautiful actually was we went to this beautiful mountainous scene and we were all alone there and it was the place where Michael screamed. And he was getting out all the rage that he had left from all of the things that he was angry about. He just screamed this, but no one else could hear it because it was just me and him out there. But he needed to purge it. You know what I mean? And it was beautiful. It was a good thing.
Well, I was going to say, Tracy brings up a question as a result of that. What is the process that entities go through who commit crimes while human? What do they have to do to face that judgment that you're talking about?
Well, it's different for every single one, and that's a very good question. My books talk about this a lot. In the latter part of the Mysteries of the Redemption, the Discipline Pathway, we talk about the hell realms and the purgatorial realms and how these realms operate. And so one of the things that we learn there is that we go where we're compatible. So, what we are interiorly is what we're compatible to. So, we will just naturally amend to that in the afterlife. So if we are a lustful being, we will amend to the lustful beings. If we are a greedy being, we will amend to the greedy beings. There are hell realms called things like muddy flats of vanity and greed. There are really low places for people who are practicing the satanic arts. They're really horrible, horrible places. Those are horrible places. Among the worst I've visited. People who commit horrible, evil crimes. There's this particular hell realm it's called the hell realm for the consumers of children. This is a place where people go who have harmed children, who have corrupted the souls of children. And in this realm, it's literally like the ground is like this muddy slosh, and the beings become almost like a giant beetle-like creature, almost, and they're flat and they can only look down. And there are these beings that are like the guardians of the realm, and if they ever look up, they're lashed back down. They're completely contained because you do not ever corrupt the soul of an innocent child. And one of the things I learned in these experiences was that's like one of the worst things that any of us can do. And that's just a really serious violation. But there's so many different places. So for every possible vice that you can think of, for the 7 deadly sins, think of, greed, lust, pride, avarice, all these things. And then think of all the hundreds of different manifestations of those. And there is a realm that manifests where the people who are compatible to that is where they would go. There is a really interesting book from the 1800s that really lays out this process very well. It's called A Wanderer in the Spirit Lands by A. Farnese, and it shows the process of a soul after life who begins in a lower hell as he works his way up towards the heavenly realms again. It's a very, very fascinating ancient text that I recommend for someone who's interested in learning about that process. But another person you might want to read as well is Emanuel Swedenborg, and his text on that would be Heaven and Hell, where he explains how these forces work for the justice and how these punishments are meted out, so to speak. There's also another text. It's an old Gnostic text called the Pistis Sophia, which also explains how these punishments are carried out for individual crimes, like the crime of murder or the crime of thievery, that is, unrepented thievery, all of these types of things. A lot of the things that my books will also talk about are the different types of demons that you're going to run into in the physical sphere. Like, for instance, the Lord demon, who is a very, very cunning demon and is one of the most rampant ones in our world today, which is the demon that tells people that they're smarter than God, that God is stupid, it's a dumb idea, and therefore, worldly intelligence is better than, is smarter than that. So anyone who has a faith or a belief in God or Christ or anything like that, they're just superstitious and maybe a little bit stupid. And that's the Lord demon. That's the action of the Lord demon. We have the Gull demon, which is the demon which operates for, negative and disruptive sexuality. It's not necessarily the same as a succubus or an incubus, which is, the type of demons that literally people experience where they it's a even more serious form of a sexual demon. But the Gull demon is someone that tries to lure people into inappropriate sexual behavior, and it's destructive sexual energy. It's not so it's not necessarily just like something that pushes you all the way over to the evil end. It's something that pushes you to the destructive end, and so it becomes easier to fall into that trap and then get pushed a little further later. There's other types of demons that rule all the vices, of greed and pride. The Lord demon is the one that revolves around pride. You have Ashira is one of the demons that rules over greed. But, we also have all of the angelic hierarchy, the same angelic hierarchy with the archangels, and the arch demons. They're all part of this, celestial thing as well, but there are all these generals and soldiers and stuff that you learn about in the out-of-body experience. And under the overview series, I wrote 2 books. One is on angelology and one is on demonology, so you can learn some of the basics of the hierarchies if you're interested in those hierarchies of the angelic and demonic orders. Just to give you a starting place. But even reading my books, The Mysteries of the Redemption, starting there, but there's tons more. You'll learn more about the soldiers as well, as you're going forward.
But there is, in your experience, there is pure evil and there is pure good that's trying to battle that evil.
Oh, yes. And, this is one of the things, we talk about the battles between the principalities and powers, and that absolutely exists, and that is pure evil and pure good. And absolutely. And see the difference between, this is the difference that people often don't see, but this is something that you'll be taught mystically if you are having out-of-body experiences. There are different levels of darkness. So you have ignorance, which is when you see people make mistakes and it's purely out of ignorance, but bad things happen, and that can be coming from ignorance. You also have what's called dominant darkness, which is more of, I know better, but I don't care. But when you get to pure evil, you're dealing with the character of, I actually enjoy causing harm to other living beings. And that's what pure evil is. And so when you're looking at pure love, which is its opposite, pure love loves causing goodness and light to happen to other beings. So that's what the forces are that are fighting against one another in this world when they talk about the principalities and powers of good and evil fighting amongst themselves. And this comes back, ironically, a good way to really sum the grand phases of the soul, which is what we're talking about in out-of-body travel. This is what you're experiencing, is that you are working on the purification of the soul so that you will be working towards bringing in more of the light, because in the mortal realms where we live, realms 3 and 4, dimension 3 and 4, the purpose of this mortal realm is for us to overcome the good and evil, the dark and light within ourselves, and to become able to discern and work with the good and evil around us and to alter that as well. And so that's what we're seeing when we learn about the angels and the demons. We are learning to bring more goodness and light into our soul, and we're actually performing the function of why we are here and why we've incarnated here in this particular mortal realm, because that is the reason why souls incarnate into a realm like this one. And so that's why we are here. So we want to actually be aware of that factor of identifying the darkness, taking in more light, more awareness, more wisdom, so we can move forward towards the evolutionary scale.
So it's not just a matter of us being caught in the middle of a war. We actually have a role to play within it.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Because we are literally, that war is raging within each and every one of us. That's why we're incarnate here. The very nature, see, now, if you understand what I said earlier, and so take that to here, which is we go where we're compatible. We are here because we are compatible to this, which means that battle between good and evil is raging within our soul. The battle between darkness and light. What does that mean we need to do? We have to begin the process of identifying that which remains in darkness within ourselves and learn to alter it towards the light. How do we do that? We do that through prayer, meditation, spiritual reading. What does that do for us? The ancient sacred texts provide us with the ancient wisdom that was left behind by the prophets, saints, mystics, sages, saints and sages and ascetics who came before us and left their last words, which were the secrets of how they ascended from this realm and completed that mission that we have to now complete. So by taking in the knowledge that they have left behind, we are giving ourselves the chance to find that secret and overcome that darkness within ourselves and also graduate this realm as they did before us. And so we are here too because we're compatible here. That battle rages inside of us. So once we recognize that, then it's like, oh, okay, now I know what to do. I can focus on that, and I can get the job done, so I can get on to the next thing, so to speak.
And then we only have a few moments left. But extraterrestrials, as you've been mentioning, also kind of play a role in this as well. There's actually a galactic council of extraterrestrials.
Yes, there is. There's a galactic council that includes about 3 to 4 members of every occupied world. And there's literally hundreds of members in this galactic council. Its function is to try to keep a balance between all of these different species and worlds, and try to keep everyone, from doing anything stupid, basically, and trying to create a unity. We've had a lot of help here on Earth from a lot of different actual races. We've got the Pleiadians, we've got these Tibetans, this other higher realm being that I told you about. We've got the Arcturians. We have all the ones that everyone knows about, the Greys, and we have some negative ones that people know about, like the Reptilians and some other things. And there's a lot of other species that we don't probably have time to mention. But in the Galactic Council, there's going to be 3 or 4 from every world that is occupied that is consciously able to be there. And, so our Earth is just a recent addition because of the fact that, we are just kind of becoming more of a space age world, And so the purpose of the Galactic Council is to kind of help worlds to ascend into a lighter sphere. And that's what our world is attempting to do at this time, but it's difficult. It's not happening as was hoped. There is a little bit of difficulty here. There's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of darkness pulling it down, and so those who are trying to bring more light into the world can utilize that. All of the light and the work that they're doing to try to be more of a force for that goodness that we want to bring in, because there's a lot that is not happening that was hoped for at this time.
Well, if people want to find out more about that and about all the different things that we've discussed, including how to have their own out-of-body experiences, as Marilynn said, you can go to her website and download her books for free. That's linked up right at midnight.fm.com if you want to go there to try to find it, or if you want to go directly to it, it's outofbodytravel.org. Thank you, Marilynn, for joining us tonight and for sharing a lot of your research and experiences with us.
Oh, thank you, Tim. I've had a great time, and I appreciate the invite.
And thank you for staying in your body the whole time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I was thinking a few times that, if ever there was going to be a time to leave your body, don't do it now and then leave me on my own for 3 hours.
Good point. I'm glad I was able to stay in my body right now.
All right. Well, you have a great night and you take care.
You too. Thanks, Tim.
And everybody else out there, thank you for tuning in tonight, but don't go anywhere because Fright Day is making its debut right here on Midnight.fm coming up in just mere moments. We'll be back tomorrow night with a brand new edition of Midnight Society when we'll be talking about time travel, about exploring the fifth dimension, about parallel universes, teleportation, and all that stuff with our guest, Dr. Bruce Goldberg. So you're going to want to tune in for that. But again, as I said, Fright Day coming up just mere moments away right here on Midnight.fm, the next great program that we'll be bringing to you as part of our new schedule of programming, which, by the way, you can see for yourself at any time by going to Midnight.fm. And when you click on the little, the cheeseburger, hamburger, whatever, up there in the corner of the website, when you click on that, it's 3 lines up in the upper right-hand corner. When you click on that, that will open up the menu, and you will see as one of the options there, you can now get the network schedule and see all the programs that are coming your way. So excited. I'm ready for this. I'm ready to hear about some good horror talk. Until tomorrow night, everybody out there, have a great night. Enjoy bright day and enjoy every sandwich.